Okay, in this video we're going to talk a little bit about blending, some basic blending techniques. But what you see here is I have a canvas panel and I've taped it to a board. Now you don't have to do this. I've chosen to do this just so it doesn't move. You could work just on the canvas panel. If you have a board, that would be great to tape it to. It just stops the whole thing from moving. But it's entirely up to you. It's optional. If you want a masonite board, which is what this is, they do sell them at the KCC bookstore, so you can get one there. But like I said, you don't have to. I've used blue painter's tape because that's easy to sort of pull up and it doesn't really damage the surface you're working on. But you can use really any tape you want. And I've actually taped it off into 4 sections. You don't have to do that. You can just work freely, but I'm doing it for ease of demonstrations. You can see what the effect is we're trying to achieve. And it's kind of a funky taping system. Don't worry, you'll see why I did this as we proceed. So what we're going to do is we're going to create gradients. We're going to go from black to white and try to blend colors all the way along. So to begin that, what you want to do is get your palette. This is a disposable palette. You can see it's just wax paper. You can peel it, throw it away when you're done, scrape off the paint, put it onto a new palette. And I've given myself 3 whites and 2 blacks. Now, this is a lot, only because I'm going to have a lot of clean white that I need to work with. But normally if you put out a palette for your paints, you'll put one color, one dab for each color. Hang on, with my brush. Which is usually about this, this size, and then 2 whites. It's always good to have 2 whites because the white gets dirty very quickly, and you want to have clean white at your disposal. So laying out my palette like this, I'm going to be using a nylon brush. This is obviously not a new brush, but you'll notice that when the first time you work, your white nylon bristles will actually stain and change color. So if they look like this after the first time you've painted, don't worry about it, it's clean. As long as when you wipe it on something like a tissue, you don't see color, it's clean. So they're going to change color immediately. And then I also have just 1 jar of turpenoid in here, and it's a little cloudy because there was some paint in it from yesterday. So you can have 2 jars because we're going to be cleaning in our brush and we're working with black and white. 1 jar could be for darker cleans, 1 jar can be for lighter cleans. It really doesn't matter. And then finally I'm using a cotton rag, an old t-shirt. These are ideal for wiping the brush, and then later on we'll be using them to wipe away things in the painting. So like I said, we're going to try and make a gradation from black to white. And what I want you to do is when you create one kind of gradation is kind of paint it with white for about 3/4 of the way and then add the black, because the black changes the white a lot. So we don't want to have equal black and white. All right, so mostly white and a little bit of black. So what I'm going to do first is dip your brush in the turpenoid, or if you're using acrylic, it'll be water. If you are using acrylic, you can add retarding medium to your palette. You can either do that by putting a few drops on each color, or putting a little pile in some spots so that when you pick it up and you mix it into your color. And again, the retarding medium will slow down the drying of the paint. Everything I do and everything I demonstrate will be done in oils. So you'll just have to make those substitutions if you're working with acrylics. So what I'm doing is I'm just getting my brush wet. And that allows me to make the paint a little bit more flowing, okay? Because it's way too thick when it comes out of the tube. We don't want to be too wet, but we don't want to be too sticky and too dry. So you get a nice consistency, and this is something you will figure out as you start to paint. It's really hard to describe. It's all about the touch and the feel, but you will find your happy medium as you start to do that. So what I want you to do is paint white about 3/4 of the way, all the way along, inside the area that you're going to be working. I'm going to have you do 3 different types. I've got 4 here. Hang on, that's just a chunk of paint that's dry, to get that out of the way. While I have the 4, I'm going to just do them all, okay? So I don't have to keep coming back and cleaning my brush too much. So take all 4 arrays, but you're actually going to have a different number, and I'll explain why later, because you're probably going to duplicate some of these and try them several times. All right, so let me just get this in here. A little bit more turpenoid on that. A little bit wetter. You don't want it too runny, so it's like, you know, milk or ink, but you don't want it too sticky because it's kind of unworkable. And sometimes you get dry chunks like this in your paint. Just pick them up and throw them off to the side. If you've been painting for a little while and your tube has been open. Okay, so that's pretty much 3/4 of the way for all of them. Now what I'm gonna do is clean my brush by pressing it down in the bottom of the jar and swirling it vigorously. Take off the excess paint. Again, dip it again. I'm coming over to my black. I'm making my black a little bit more workable. Whoop, let's see, that's too runny, all right? Put that down, it's too wet. You can see it spreading out, so I'll come and get some of the thicker black. And then fill in this last section here with black. So we have a lot more white than we have black on the palette. Sorry, on the canvas panel. So all this is doing is it's getting us prepared. So we're going to be using different techniques to make gradients. Okay, so I'm going to put the palette out of the way for now and to the side. Okay, so I'm just going to start up here with this one. Now, one of the big mistakes people make when they blend, let's say our object is to blend white into black, and to make gray. And these can be any two colors, blue, yellow, red, blue, whatever. You just want to get a gradation. What a lot of people do is they take one color and they move it into the next color, and I'm pressing lighter, and then they come back and they move this into this color. And you can see if you keep going, what's going to happen. And this is a very, very common mistake. When people try to blend two colors, they blend like this. And all I'm doing by doing this is I'm picking up the white and I'm putting it in the black, and I'm picking up the black and I'm putting it in the white. And if you keep doing this, well, you can see what happens. You just get one homogeneous gray area. So you've probably figured out by now what the problem was. The problem was the direction of my brush stroke. If I want to go and blend these two colors, I have to go in this direction. I have to go up and down. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take the black and I'm going to push it into the white. What I mean by push is I'm going to press hard with my brush and come down. Now I'm going to start pressing lighter so less and less paint comes off. Okay, then I'm going to clean my brush because I'm going to come back to the black. So if I get down here, I cannot lift my brush up and come here. That's the same problem as what I had right here. So what I want to do is I need more black. I'm going to put some more black on here, and I'm going to do this again because I want to push the black a little bit further than I went. Keep the gray in the middle, and then keep the light gray here at the end, and come down and sort of stop before you get to the end. And you can see it's uneven. There's dark and light patches. Don't worry about that. What you want to do is establish your gradient. Okay, now what we're going to do is smooth it out. And to do that, we clean the brush. Again, pressing down vigorously on the bottom. Dry it. And really press your fingers into the bristles to try and dry it. And I can see I still have some black paint in there, so I'm going to just get it wet again. And when you totally dry your brush, you get what's called a blender. All right. Now I'm going to push this direction. I'm going to come back, maybe too dark right here. So I'm going to start with my white. I'm going to go up and down, and I'm going to move across. And when I come to a patch that's, you know, not totally smooth, all I want to do is go back and forth on it this way or this way. Now, if I want to go here, I have to walk it back. Okay, I can't pick it up. So I'm going to keep going. Kind of even out my dark grays now. And then I'm going to walk it back gently here. Now you're not going to get rid of all the streaks. You can, but it takes time, a lot of time. Okay, so I'm cleaning my brush again, and I'm looking at it and I'm seeing, okay, I've got some dark regions here. So what that means is I have to go over them a little bit more. But I'm going to start here again, pick up some white, and transition this zone right here. So I get some white on my brush, I come back in, and where this gray is touching, I'm going to press a little harder to put more white down, just so I happy with that softness of the transition. And now when I come to these regions of dark and light, I'm going to press very gently, and I'll go back and forth over them just to make sure I can even them out. And I take this all the way down to the end. Now from my angle, I've got light coming down, hitting this and up to my eye. So I see it in a very, very different way than you probably do. So what you need to do always with your work is walk around it. So come along to the side. There's a transition here that I could not see from the angle I was in. So what I'm going to do is the same thing. I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to dry it really well. I'm going to come to this area, and I'm just going to go back and forth a bit. And I see another transition area and another. So I'm just very gently going back and forth over these. Okay, and then I can start again, come back down. Whoops, should have cleaned my brush. And you can do this again and again and again repeatedly. I'm not actually wanting you to be super, super perfect, so don't spend too much time on it. But I just want you to get the hang of it. Okay, so I'm going to come back in here. I see more transitions I want to smooth out. Come back. I'm pressing very, very lightly with my brush. Going back. Again, I'll change my view so I can see, because light plays a huge factor. So you need to move around your canvas, hold it at different angles. Okay, so you'll see now if I take that off. So if I take this first piece of tape off, right, this just tells us that this technique doesn't work, right? So you look at this. And see, that's just a gray band. But if we come down here, we get a nice gradient. Oops, let's separate those two pieces of tape. Right there. So you see we have our white, we have our black, we have our middle gray, our dark gray, and our light gray. And you can see I could transition this zone just a little bit more if I wanted to. So try this. Try it maybe a couple of times. If you have a nylon brush, it's a lot easier. If you have a bristle brush, you tend to get lines more, but that's okay. Just learn to control the pressure of the brush and the weight. So what this does is it creates a gradient that we would call linear. Linear is one of the terms we've introduced in the course, and it has to do with the idea that the paint is blended in such a way that you're hiding the brush strokes, that you have super, super smooth transitions. In linear painting, the edges are really crisp and clear usually. The transitions are very, very smooth, and it's almost like you're looking at a photograph, but people were painting in the linear style long before photography, so it looks exactly the way an object might look if it's got softness. What developed out of that was another style called painterly, and painterly can get the same effect, but in a very, very different way. It's got a completely different feel. And in painterly, what we do is we keep the brushwork, we keep the marks of the brush. And then if you stand back from that painting or you squint your eyes, they all come together and blend. So after you've tried this linear approach, I want you to try and make a painterly gradation. And so again, you've laid out your mostly white, a little bit of black, and now you're gonna do a completely different technique. You're going to be moving your brush, you can be dabbing, you can be stroking, and the trick with painterly is not to do it too much. All right, so you do a little bit or you go very, very quickly. So this would be kind of a painterly thing. So here I am taking the black and I'm coming down to the white, and then I'm taking the white and I'm coming up to the black. And you can see that I'm getting the same basic concept. but I'm keeping all of my marks and my brush strokes, okay? And then what I'm gonna do is, I feel like I want a little bit more dark, so I'm gonna come over to my palette, get some more black, and just kind of bring some more black into it. And you can have things mixed up, so maybe there's a dark patch right there. It's okay, it's not the end of the world. And then I'm gonna come back, maybe do a little bit more black just at the end here, so there's a little bit more of a transition. And that's it. It's very quick. It gives you a very kind of spontaneous, energetic looking array. And you can see if I take away the tape for the boundary, oops, you also get a gradient from light to dark. All right, and I can see, well, maybe I could expand this area just a little bit more. But the trick is you're keeping the brush work. And then from a distance, you're going to see this transition, not exactly like this, but very similar to this. Another way to see that right now would be to squint your eyes. If you squint your eyes, you see, okay, there's all this. And I can kind of come in and fiddle and kind of transition a few more pieces. But the trick with this is not to play with it too much. That's what we're going to do here. Okay, so why are we going to do that? So if you go back to this linear style, let's pretend you're painting an apple, which is round. And you got a light side and a dark side of the apple. There's no way you can do this and keep the roundness or the shape of the apple or the bottle or the cloth or the face or the nose, because you're not going to be taping off everything in your painting every time you paint it, masking it. And when you go up, you can't control the shape. So this is good for practice and it's a good idea, but it's very impractical. Impractical. We can't use this in painting usually. So how do we get this effect? Well, remember I said when you're working here, you got to go fast and you got to not do it too much. So the way to get this in real paintings of objects is to do this and go overboard. In other words, keep doing this. And if you keep doing this, it starts to look like this. So when you're actually making paintings of objects, this third technique, if you're trying to be linear, is the way you would do it. So again, we would start by being very painterly, blending our colors together. And again, I'm going to get a little bit more black because I don't feel like I put enough black onto the paint. And you just keep going. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to clean my brush, but not dipping it this time, just wiping it. And everybody has their own kinds of strokes. So you can see mine change direction very rapidly and quickly. Some people might be more dabby. Some people might have more lines going in one direction, but the really is better if you mix it up. Now you see these little lines, that's because the bristles are separating. And the way to get rid of that is you just kind of wipe it off. Again, you can clean it, but you can just wipe it. And you can see that if I just keep going with this technique, and as I go lighter, I obviously want to press lighter, because if I press hard, the dark that's up here is going to come off. We begin to get the same basic effect as the linear. You see, the more I do it, the softer and softer and softer the transitions become. Again, I'm going to come back to my black. I'm going to push it out a little bit more by pressing down a little bit more. Drying my brush. And as you go, you start to press lighter and lighter and lighter with your brush. Now, the longer I do this, the smoother it's going to get, but I'm not going to bore you with being here too long. Another way to make transitions really smooth in a painting is really just let this dry and then go over it again. And the second layer is so much easier. The paint goes on much smoother. Here, whoops, changing, my light changed there for a minute. So bear with me, we're almost done. Yeah, I lost my light. Okay, so when we do this, and we take off the tape, we get a smooth transition just like the linear. So what I'd like you to do is try all three of these, you know, and maybe you'll do two of these, maybe you'll do two of these, maybe as many as you want to feel comfortable. This is not handed in, it's just practice. Okay, so try to do this, control it. If you have a nylon brush, you're going to be a little smoother. If it's a bristle, you will see more lines. That's okay. We don't need to get rid of every single line here. Try the painterly approach. Keep the brush moving. Don't stay in one area too long. And then try the combined approach, where you start off painterly with the transition, and then you just keep going until it smooths out.